question's for the Prime Minister. Just pull it up here.
Oh, hold on. He's got to flip his hair first.
In an interview today with CTV News, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, he said that he expects the alliance members, including and specifically Canada, to spend 2% of GDP on defense. But if they're not at that level this year, they should have a date or when they will hit 2%. Your government has never articulated a date. Yes or no to when they will say when Canada will hit that 2%?
When we took office in 2015, we took over from a Conservative government that had underinvested in defence. Under Stephen Harper and his Conservatives, defence spending in Canada actually dipped below 1% for the first time. And that's unacceptable. That's why, from the very beginning, we committed to increasing defence spending by 70%. Over time, we're seeing the world continue to get more challenging, more complicated, with really difficult geopolitical forces, including a war in Ukraine. That means we need to continue to step up, and we have as a government, we will continue to. We will be there to step up with our NATO partners. We will be there to continue to make sure that the women and men of the Canadian Armed Forces have the equipment they need, and that our allies can count on for us to continue to be there for them.
Date in mind when you could reach that 2% number?
We're going to continue to put forward our budgets and our proposals at the appropriate times.
So
Next
that's
question,
no.
Bloomberg.
Hi, good morning. A question for Premier Ely, actually, which is...
Isn't
made some
Bloomberg
remarks about
blocked right
Bank of
now?
Canada. Are you calling explicitly for the Bank of Canada to cut rates now? And if so, what would be an appropriate level and why?
Thanks. My concern with the current interest rates in British Columbia is that the biggest driver of cost for families here is when they go to renew their mortgage, and they used to pay, I don't know, the amount they used to pay is now doubling or in any event, dramatically increasing beyond what their budgets can afford. And as a result, when
That's
families
because of
are
that
seeing
man right
their
there behind you.
mortgage payments go up by that much, they're cutting back on all kinds of other expenditures. It's having a profound impact on British Columbia. People who don't have mortgages, who just have debt, are seeing their monthly payments go up every month. The people who are trying to rent, they're looking for a place to live. The developers who would build, the home builders who would build this rental housing, are seeing construction financing charges go through the roof, making it impossible for them to build the rental housing that's needed. So when I look at the numbers from the Bank of Canada, and they say that inflation for rents is up 6%, and inflation for mortgage payments is in the double digits, I know what's driving inflation in British Columbia, and it's interest rates. And so BC builds, we can do our part, and I agree with the governor that interest rates alone will not
Because
solve
of
the
that guy
housing
right
crisis.
behind you, dude.
But we're doing, as you can see today, everything we can to build the housing we need. We're expediting processes around building housing near transit. We're providing government financing to deal with some of the impacts of interest rates. We're providing public land. We're allowing people on single-family lots to build duplexes or triplexes with the same amount of processes building a single-family home. It's just basic work that needs to be done. And every province, I agree, should be doing that work. However, we are doing that work in BC, and we're feeling the impacts of interest rates far more profoundly. The Bank of Canada is the best placed. The governor of the Bank of Canada is the best place to set the interest rates ahead of governments. They're independent, that's their role, but they really need to pay attention to what's happening in BC, how families are being hurt here, what is driving costs here, because I can tell you right now, it's housing.
And can I just ask a follow-up, and for the Prime Minister as well, have you not considered cutting fiscal spending as a way to address
Thank
inflation
you.
as well?
Good question.
Yeah, you know
Thank
what, this is an argument actually, and I suspect we'll probably have this argument over the next few weeks in relation to BC's budget as well as in the next election. There are definitely people out there who say when people are hurting, when the economy is struggling for various reasons, the best thing the government should do is pull back and not support people. I just fundamentally disagree with that. That is the time when people need government to provide support. I was out in Langley the other day, and I was talking to a woman who supports vulnerable seniors and talking about the increased risk of homelessness for seniors in British Columbia. Is now the time to stop building long-term care housing, providing supports for seniors in relation to housing, so we can have a bunch of seniors sitting down in the homeless shelter? I was at a school where kids whose parents can't afford groceries for breakfast are getting a breakfast program. is now the time to say, well, unfortunately, we can't afford the province-wide breakfast program that we established. Kids, you're going to have to go hungry today because, global financial things. The reality is that we will have this debate over the budget and over the course of the budget and over the course of the election about whether British Columbians want a government that steps up and supports people when they're vulnerable,
A government that spends too much money,
or a government that pulls back, and we'll have that discussion.
or a government that sticks up for people. I think that's the argument there.
First of all, on inflation, we did get a piece of good news this morning. The inflation rate dropped down below 3%. Which is within the target rate that the federal government, the Bank of Canada sets in terms of target. So we are optimistic that the Bank of Canada will start bringing down interest rates sometime this year, hopefully sooner rather than later, but that is their decision to make. But the challenge that David just outlined is the challenge that we share as we're here today as progressive governments that understand that the best way to support people through tough times is investing intelligently in ways that are going to help them without adding to inflation. Investing in dental care, as we did for seniors and for kids who don't have access to it and families. That's not inflationary, despite the fact that right-wing politicians like Pierre Poilievre voted against that with some inflation excuses. Being there to support families in times of need, that's something we continue to believe in. Stepping up on childcare, where we signed the first agreement with BC, where creating $10 a day or cutting childcare fees in half and creating more spaces as we bring them down to $10 a day, that takes off huge pressure from families that are seeing mortgage prices, mortgage rates and costs go up. Continuing to step up in ways that are investing in housing, investing in middle-income rentals that people can afford, taking the GST off of purpose-built construction from rental apartments. These are things that, yes, the federal government and the BC government respectively have to spend money to invest to help people through these difficult times. Right-wing politicians continue to talk about the fact that we need cuts, that somehow cuts are going to help people get into homes or afford childcare, or cuts to programs are going to be able to help the more vulnerable or seniors. Their approach on austerity, their approach of justifying their cuts and going back to a trickle-down where the wealthiest get great advantages and tax breaks and hopefully it'll make it down to everyone else simply doesn't work. It never has. And right now, today, you have proof what happens when progressive governments step up, roll up our sleeves, and provide solutions for people. Yes, we need to, and we have continued to see inflation come down, and we need to continue to watch it come down, and that means being fiscally responsible. But doing so in a way that puts support for people and support for the economy that we're building for the future at the center of everything we do, that's the thing that right-wing conservatives simply don't get.
Thank you. We'll now go over to Canadian Press.
Thank you. A question for the Prime Minister from my colleagues in Ottawa, actually. So there are more than 200,000 Ukrainians in Canada who have been displaced by the war, and several surveys show many of them would like to stay here, but that it would be difficult to accommodate that many people into the current immigration plans. So with no end to the war in sight, what's your message to Ukrainians who would like to stay here in Canada on a permanent basis?
I got to sit down with the Ukrainian family just a couple of days ago in Winnipeg, and we talked exactly about that, about the displacement. They had, their middle son was really finding it tough here in Canada, but the older son made a great group of friends. These are people who've been displaced by the horrific invasion of Ukraine by Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin, and we need to make sure that we're continuing to be there for them. Canada will be there for Ukraine with as much as it takes, with as long as it takes, despite conservatives, politicians pulling back their support for Ukraine free trade. We know that we need to be there, and we've accepted 200,000 people from Ukraine who are right now living, contributing in communities across this country. We're focused on ending this war. We will continue to be there to support them, and I think a lot of people are going to be making decisions once this war draws to a close. In the meantime, we're going to continue to be there to support people going through unbelievably difficult times because of Vladimir Putin's heinous actions.